Rarely have protests over deaths in custody drawn so many Australians. Tens of thousands rallied in Australian cities, great and small. Their focus, hundreds of Aboriginal deaths in jails and police stations in the past 30 years, with no police officer ever found guilty. Here, the death of George Floyd has suddenly created widespread anger about an Australian problem.
I've waited too long for justice to be handed down for my people, and it's time for me to make a change in the only way that people are going to listen to me, and I'm going to do it peacefully.
In Brazil, demonstrators have been raising their voices against the killing of black people mainly in poor neighborhoods called the favelas. Figures released by the Rio de Janeiro Public Security Institute show that killings by police have increased to record levels in recent years. Hundreds marched on the city's outskirts to draw attention to what they see as Brazil's shame. Every 23 minutes in the world, a young black person dies. We have to fight because of that. If we don't fight, that will continue and we will keep dying. In Mexico, masked demonstrators vandalized buildings and threw stones at the US Embassy in the capital. Protests began here on Thursday after the death of a young man in Jalisco state. He was allegedly beaten to death in a police station for not wearing a mask. Authorities have now announced the arrest of 3 officers over the man's death, but that hasn't stopped the protests. We're here in support of the great uprising of the black people and of all colors for the crime against George Floyd committed by big policemen of the United States. This movement is not just about showing outrage at the death of African-American Floyd in the US. The Black Lives Matter movement has unleashed a wave of protests against racism worldwide. Demonstrations are continuing this weekend with protests held in East Asia and large crowds expected in European cities.
And a major Europe
Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah. All praise to Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah. Now, these protests and uproars of the people is not about anybody but for the children of Israel, because George Floyd was a child of Israel. You see, it's nobody in America being gunned down or murdered by the police. It's nobody in these other countries that's being murdered by the police unless they are a descendant of the nation of Israel. You see, and so that's the detail that these people is leaving out. They interviewing these Hamites and things, but these Hamites is not being destroyed by the police in these foreign nations. So anyhow, when you get to looking at the prophecies that's in the Bible about the nation of Israel, this is letting you know what time we living in. You go to Luke to set the foundation of what's going on. Luke 21:24 say, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captives into all nations. That's why it's got a global protest, because these individuals is in all nations. They have been led captive into all nations, and they have had offspring in those other nations. And it say, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Because it's a time that they have. They have an appointed time to rule over the Israelites. And until that time is fulfilled, they're going to be in rulership. And the Israelites going to be scattered in captivity, living out the curses of their captivity. And so these other nations is helping with the protests, but they not understanding why this is happening to these people that they protesting for. And you see, that's what the it say, why do the heathen rage? That can go along with that too. But the reason why the focus is on these individuals, because Yahushua, who they ignorantly call Jesus Christ, he gave you a time and certain signs to watch and see what's going to happen. So he told his apostles, he told them what would be going on. And Ezra was shown the end of the world and what would be going on. And so when you look at that, the Israelites is in all nations. In Matthew 24, it talks about the last days. It say, when the end of the Gentile times is up and Yahushua come, it say in Matthew 24:31, it say, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the others. So in all of these nations that these people are protesting and seeing how the police that are being controlled by the Most High is punishing these group of peoples, and they don't understand why it's happening to these people. That's because the Most High is getting ready to gather his elect, and he's giving them a period of tribulation. And so Ezra's going to clear the whole operation up when he tell you what's going to happen when the gathering of his elect starts. And the time for him to come and gather his elect, when it starts, he gave you a sign. In 2nd Ezra chapter 9, he say, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the sign pass, which I have told thee before, then thou shalt understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the earth which he made. Verse 3, therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people of the world. Verse 4, then thou shalt well understand that the Most High spake of these things from the days which were before thee, even from the beginning. You see, this is how you're going to understand when the Most High is coming to gather his elect. It's uproars of the people concerning this elect group. They're being persecuted globally, you see, and they throwing the racism out there. But the problem is that this is a special race, a special people that God has chose to be for himself. And he punishing his people, and he's using this punishments for identification purposes. So these individuals can know who they are, and the enemy of these peoples trying to figure out who is these individuals that's being persecuted. And so you got Amos telling you why they being persecuted. Amos giving you the understanding. Amos chapter 10, it say, all the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, which say the evil shall not overtake nor prevent us. You see, he's punishing his people. When you go to Amos chapter 3, verse 2, it say, you only have I known of all the people of the earth, therefore I will punish you for your iniquities or sins. And so he's only knowing the Israelites, and he's punishing them because they are his special peoples that he made for himself. So when he visit the earth and get ready to visit the earth, you see the uproars of the peoples is causing these peoples to realize that it's a group of people that's going through something over here in Babylon the Great, the land of their captivity, plus in other red dragon nations, these European nations, and it's identifying these peoples, and it's God punishing them with their police. When you go, most people that know the Bible, they know Romans 13 is saying that God controls these powers, these governmental powers and things, the police and all these people in authority. God controls them. So that's why how he's punishing the sinners of his people. He's not giving these death sentences until his elect or his faithful servants. Now when you go to Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6, he say, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God, a separate people. For the Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. You see, that's why you seeing the uproars of the people, because he's starting to punish the sinners of his people at an alarming rate, and he's getting ready to gather the elect of his people. And he's showing the elect who they are by the punishments and the curses that's upon his people. You see, letting them understand that they are fitting the curses of his chosen peoples, and now they need to repent and change their life. And its majority of them are the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans here in Babylon the Great in America. But it's also they were scattered through captivity in all nations. So some of them look like the other nation, and some of them is living in these other nations, but they come from the seed of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And so that's why we're seeing the uproars of the people in this protesting that's been going on, with all these cop killings, and now with the so-called COVID pandemic thing. Now I'm gonna leave it there. All praise to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Kakadash. Double honors to the elders pushing the truth. Peace to the elect worldwide. The kingdom is at hand. Shalom.